and this is another episode of Tony Kent Writes and Cross-Examines. As I keep saying in every one of these, the most pathetic cross-examination that you will ever see this side of Basildon Crown Court. So today I am going to be speaking to the wonderful author Amanda Jennings, who is the author of The Cliff House, In Her Wake, the Judas Scar, pardon me. I couldn't read my own writing, sorry Amanda. The Sworn Secrets, and most importantly, the upcoming The Storm, which is out in July. Amanda, thank you very much for coming along.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for doing this. It's brilliant. It's lovely to be here.
I say coming along. I think we're both sitting in our own homes, not a million miles from each other, but neither one of us has moved outside the front door.
Exactly, as exciting as it gets nowadays.
Everyone now has a webcam and everyone now has a speaker, and it's everyone's become very efficient. So I don't think any of us are going to have to go back to working in offices, are we?
Yeah, I think you could take a group of introverts / extroverted introverts and say, here, you can do it all from home, and we're there.
It's a conversation I was having earlier with Luca Veste, actually, where he was saying the thing he really misses at the moment is sport. And he said the reason that's the thing he misses is because it's the only thing that's changed. Yeah. Because otherwise he just sits indoors anyway.
Absolutely. I feel the same. I do feel the same.
So you have, coming up, as we said, the 23rd of July, you've got your 5th book, which is The Storm.
I know, I can't believe it. I actually can't believe that it's 5. I have to actually start calling myself an author now, I think. I used to just say I'm someone who'd written a book, and then someone who'd written 2 books. And now I think probably 5 books down, I probably have to admit that actually I might be an author.
Yeah, I think you're allowed to say that now.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about that, of course, is the date. And you might be okay. I mean, we don't know where we are, do we, in terms of lockdown? But the 23rd of July, it's far enough away, you might get a proper launch.
I might do, to be honest, and I don't want to sound too easygoing, but I'm actually being quite zen about it because there's not an awful lot we can do, is there? So I think I'm sort of not expecting one way or the other, if that makes sense. I'm very fortunate that I'm with a literary agency that's based out of Goldsborough Books, so I get to have my launches at Goldsborough Books, which is lovely.
Yeah.
And the last couple at Cliff House, I had an amazing, gorgeous paperback launch at Harrogate. We had a lovely reception up at Harrogate. So I do love a launch. I love to be, obviously the centre of attention, and any excuse for champagne. But I think I'm sort of not holding out for one, and I think I'll probably be at peace with that, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah, I'd be.
But you're not going to complain if someone says, "By the way, we've got some champagne waiting at Goldsborough.
Well, no,
John, would you like to come along?"
No, that sounds really good, and now I'm really unhappy. I have to have a launch.
Well, I was supposed to have my launch of Power Play that came out in April at Goldsborough. Because David and Daniel did a special edition for me, a limited edition hardback, and so I really I launched Mark for Death, my 2nd book at Goldsborough, and so I was really keen to do the next one there as well. Yeah. And I ended up having to do it in my kitchen on Facebook.
And was it a very? I mean, obviously it was a different experience, but did you still get some enjoyment out of it, and was it okay? Or
in all honesty, I really enjoyed it. I got drunk. And I got drunk and spoke rubbish. So with my wife in the room shaking her head, throwing things.
It was a weekday evening for me, Tony, honestly.
So going back to The Storm, The Storm is a standalone, isn't it?
Yeah, they're all standalones. Yeah.
Yes. What would you say in terms of genre? In terms of, I keep saying this to people today, and it's something I thought for a long time. Crime writing is such a wide genre that it's not really a genre. It's really a banner, isn't it? Yeah. And where would you say in a sort of sub-genre that your stuff falls?
Well, I am clinging to the crime community by the tips of my bloody fingers, purely, I think, by dint of the fact that there's always bodies and blood and that sort of thing in the distance. But actually, my books are probably, I always call them psychological suspense. I don't go as far as saying psychological thriller because it's not a whodunit, or it's generally a whydunit. You know what's happened, and a period of time later that comes to rear its head again and affect these poor people in ways that you wouldn't wish upon anyone. And I suppose there are elements. Some of the books are, Storm is actually probably a little bit more traditional psychological thriller, domestic noir if you want. But I'd probably go into that area, domestic noir, psychological suspense, and at a push, if someone's trying to sell my books who might be a publisher, they'd probably go with the psychological thriller.
Right. Okay.
But, you know,
So
I'm definitely on the outskirts. There's a lot of, you know, it's a lot of families and emotions in there as well.
Well, I'm completely with you on that. I write mainly political thrillers, and I've got no political action thrillers. And apart from the fact that people get shot, I've got no idea why that qualifies me as crime writing at all.
I think it's the shooting, Tony. I think that's
give someone a gun and you're in the genre.
As soon as there's blood, you're in trouble.
So the storm is about Hannah and Nathan, and as I understand, they're living in a little village down in Cornwall.
Yep, on the outskirts of Penzance.
Outskirts of Penzance. I was going to ask actually because my father-in-law lives in Cornwall in Loo, and I was really hoping it was going to be Loo so I could send that to them and just say, this is the kind of stuff that goes on where you live.
No, my mother's side of the family is from that area, so the last few books have been centred around there. So.
Sure. Yeah. And with the storm, Hannah and Nathan have as I understand it from I've only seen the press release, which you sent me, but kind of a dual life, sort of a life for the public viewing and a life behind closed doors.
Yeah, exactly. So I think for me, so they have it's fairly obvious early on, so this isn't a spoiler in any way, that the relationship is an example of what we would probably call coercive control. We would definitely call it coercive control. It's not a violent relationship, but it is emotionally abusive. And I was really interested, in a nutshell, the idea behind the book was to answer the question, that in those relationships, often you hear people say, but I don't understand why he or she stayed. Why did he stay? Why did she stay? And I wanted to answer that question. And there is a reason why these two are locked in this relationship. And it's not obvious at the beginning, but hopefully, definitely as the book rolls on, you ask yourself that question and it gets answered.
That sounds very interesting. And this isn't a huge step away from the stuff you write genre-wise before, is it? Obviously a very different story.
No, they're all very similar. As I said, it's a sort of family traumas and how dark incidents might affect a family unit, be that a mother-child or a pair of siblings. Or I'm really interested in the family unit in terms of the fact that you can't really escape your family. You know, it's very easy to walk away friend, but actually even if you have walked away from your family, you're still linked, aren't you? So you have a sort of connection still. It just fascinates me. I love that idea of that sort of closed unit being put under pressure and pulled in all sorts of different directions.
Yeah. And where does this come from? Where does the fascination come from? Is it from something you experienced at work, where you were a researcher for the BBC, weren't you, for a long time? And...
Yeah, no, I wasn't. Definitely wasn't that. I think I'm just really inherently nosy, and I love people, and I love questions. I love to work out. I've always been like that. I've always wanted to know why, why is that person so mean to that other person? You know, what's behind that? And then as you get older, you realize that actually those whys do have an answer. And generally people will have something. I'm not excusing them, but generally people have something in their back catalogue which makes that behavior one of their characteristics, be that a sort of narcissism or a sort of however that might manifest. And I'm really interested. I know lots of writers are, but it really fascinates me that you don't have good and bad characters, that you have bad characters who you feel sympathy for, or you might have a good character. And I say good and bad in horrible inverted rabbit ears, that you have those that you then have good characters that you really suddenly think, oh, I'm not sure, why did you do that? I don't know why you did that. And I'm also fascinated by that. I used to love the idea that you would be with a friend at school or university, and they'd say, oh gosh, you're going to love so-and-so, you have to meet them, you're going to get on like a house on fire. And then you turn up and this person is the worst person in the world, and how on earth we're ever going to get on? So I love this idea that, you don't have to scratch very far beneath the surface to find, that you might have someone who's not immediately obvious why you're going to get on, but one conversation later and this is going to be your bosom buddy for life, despite the fact that they, had this odd characteristic at the beginning. So I'm really fascinated in what lies underneath, and the fact that bad people do good things and good people do bad things, and boring people occasionally do one of each. So, there's a sort of mixture of characteristics in every person.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It sort of leads me on to a question that I've been asking people. I'll explain to you when we have your answer why it leads to it, because it might not be immediately obvious. But what would you say of the four I'm about to say: music, books, film, or sport? Which one of those would you say would be the biggest influence on how you see your writing and how you on you generally?
Well, so I can answer this and I'll answer it simply, but I automatically look at that. I want to say sport, because when I was growing up, sport was a huge part of my life. It's pretty much all I did, and that's what I wanted. Well, I wouldn't want to do. That wasn't good enough, but I was doing it to a level that I could get to, and I trained a lot. And then when I have certain sporting events, the Olympics, winter and summer, Wimbledon, some world athletics, some gymnastics, I become obsessed with sport, but it's not something that has a day-to-day effect on me. So I decided I had to discount that.
Yeah.
Books and music are, again, a daily part of my life. I have found, sadly, I have to say, that my enjoyment for reading since I've become a published writer has altered. It used to be something that completely grabbed me and pulled me into a book, and I would lose hours, and anxiety would drift away when I was in a book. And books will always be really important, and I read every day, but it's changed. So for me, I'm going to say film. And film for me is everything. You give me a good film and I'll rewatch them, and I love them, and I quote them, and I identify with characters immediately in them. And I think I am quite a visual person. And I like those things that, although a book can show the subtleties of characteristic and empathies and bits and pieces, I love what a human face can do. So I think it ties up to me being really nosy again. I just love watching people and listening to people.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because it's exactly what I was, when I said I'll come back to why I said it connects. I think a film and a TV series, and perhaps even a TV series more so because of the time they have, and I kind of class them as the same thing. A good TV series is very much a film these days. I do think that they have the ability, in a way nothing else does, to show character layers. And you were talking about how you see somebody and then you get to know them later. And I think if you look at Tony Soprano, or even more so Al Swearingen in Deadwood, I genuinely think those are two characters who are as well written, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but as well written as any character in Shakespeare. They are just...
Oh, I'd say more so. I'm guarding trouble. Take it off you. I'll take the heat. I think more so. I think those characters that really speak to you and that live forever, and that you can still... I mean, I know, again, I have a little bit of trouble, given what we do for our day job or our living, or a part of our living is... So I don't want to sort of discount books completely. So I might...
Of course, yeah.
A little bit, but I think those characters that speak to you and you're never going to forget them. I'll never forget, even like Thelma and Louise when I was 18 and I watched that, and you just hit by those scenes and those characters. And I think actually writing, I tend to draw on my own life, my own emotional bits and pieces that happened in the past, but I'll also refer to films and how that makes me feel. And I'm a massive crier, so I cry in films and I laugh out loud in films, and I do that when I'm reading, but not to the same extent, I think. Yeah,
I find that. I mean, I rarely get too emotional at films or things, but it can happen.
In a manly way, in a very manly way.
No, God, no, in a pathetic way. I watched the last episode of the Good Place a couple of weeks ago, and it absolutely. I sat there thinking, right, this should not be doing this to me. I'm a man. This is not supposed to. But I do find that films and TV can hit more. Certainly for me, they can make me laugh out loud easier. They can make you cry.
I do actually wonder that when you're reading a book, you put a lot of your own self into your book. So you are interpreting a version of that character, but through your own eyes a little bit. Whereas I wonder with a film, you're much more immersed. The whole experience, and you are given less to do by the writer and the director. You are basically having your hand held through that experience.
It's easier to be manipulated as well, I guess.
Hugely, definitely. And I'm happy to be manipulated.
It's one of the. I mean, my wife and I think our entire relationship was based upon the cinema. So, it's a good thing.
As well.
I'm glad I've asked you that question. I have another one that I want to ask you, but we don't have enough time. We've only got 30 seconds left.
And
we're never going to get it. Flies, Amanda. I mean, I've noticed this today. I thought it seems like 5 minutes, but in fact, it's 15 minutes. So we're coming to the end of that, and I'm going to say thank you very much. I really appreciate you getting involved, and good luck in July with the storm. And I do hope that you get to go to Goldsborough for a launch.
Thank you, and thank you very much for doing this and having us.
I'll hopefully speak to you again soon.
Yeah, definitely. Take care. Bye.